The anime begins in the vicinity of a mansion, with a boy wondering what it means to see, since everyone tells him that he cannot see. His mother and brother feel sorry for him, and his father explains that seeing means being able to perceive colors and shapes, but that his eyes were affected by the scar left by the holy knight Estoa, and that he should be proud of it. Kunon accepts this, but comments to the maids that, although they are heroic scars, it's a shame he can't see. He then wonders if the reason he's treated as a pitiable person is because he can't see. Sometime later, one of the maids informs him that teacher Jenny has arrived and leads him to her. Kunon comments that studying magic is really boring, and the maid tells him he should take advantage of this opportunity since he has the water crest, and having the ability to use magic is something amazing. When he arrives, the teacher introduces herself to Kunon, saying that from that moment on, she will be his magic teacher and that her name is Jenny Course. Kunon uses a spell called Howdy and manages to form a ball of water. Jenny praises him, and Kunon asks what kind of magic was used. Jenny explains that he is using magic very well to produce water, and that he made something about the size of an eye. When Kunon puts his hands on his eyes, she apologizes, saying she just wanted to simplify things so he could understand. Kunon comments that it's about the size of what he's touching and says that maybe he could create an eye for himself with magic. The next day, Kunon is having breakfast and starts touching the things he usually eats every day because he's curious to know what they are like. He wonders what the juicy thing he's eating is, and the maid replies that it's lettuce. Kunon asks what's on his bread, and the maid answers that it's mustard. He picks up a piece of fruit and comments that it's an apple, but actually it's a plum, and he asks what it is. The maid replies that since he started eating a lot of different things, she's preparing more varieties. Kunon comments that he wishes he knew what he was eating, but since there are too many things on the table, he can't smell what's in his hand. Iko replies that maybe she went a little overboard, rubbing a purple grape on his face and asking if he can tell what it is. Kunon then threatens to cut her salary, and Iko stops bothering him, saying she just got carried away. Later, he is sitting with the teacher, and she asks which book he wants her to read to him. Kunon asks her to read a story about the holy knight, Estoa. She is surprised and looks at Iko, who confirms it. The teacher agrees, but asks him to let her know if he starts to feel unwell. Kunon says he'll be fine, since he's eager to learn about many things. Then it's explained that, some time ago, a great war broke out between the heroes of the human world and the demon lord. The hero Estoa Ruglia managed to successfully defeat the demon lord, but lost an arm and a leg in the battle. After the war, Estoa's descendants are sometimes children who are born missing something, whether it's an arm, a leg, or even their sight. People consider these children to be the return of a hero, calling this the hero's scars. Kunon, however, doesn't see himself that way, because he is himself and the magic he uses is his own magic. He then duplicates the water balls, and Iko excitedly shouts that it's perfect, both the control of the magic and the shape. Kunon thinks that if he can control magic perfectly, maybe he could even create eyes for himself. Iko says that he might be a rare mage. Kunon dispels the magic and collapses to the ground, saying that it's very exhausting, and that he's still far from reaching his goal, since his magic is still not enough. His maid completely misunderstands and asks if her love for him isn't enough, since she devotes herself to him so much, even going so far as to suggest that they could sleep together. Kunon immediately rejects the idea, commenting that he doesn't have enough knowledge or physical strength to create high-level magic. Iko says that he's only 7 years old and just getting started, to which Kunon replies that he's already behind, since he faints just from using basic magic. Iko says that suddenly increasing the amount of food isn't good for the body, and that he should get used to it gradually. Kunon comments that he wants to build more muscle, but that walking and running aren't feasible for him. Iko then asks why he doesn't train with sword strikes, and Kunon likes the idea. Iko tells him to look for a suitable teacher and leaves, saying she's going to talk to the boss. Kunon thanks her for the help, and she comments that she'd like a raise, which is immediately rejected, as Kunon says she makes too much noise during magic training. Iko replies that it's a good thing he listened, because if he had ignored her, she would have made him cry in bed at night. The next day, when Jenny arrives for the magic lesson, she sees Kunon training with the sword. Iko notices her presence and tells Kunon that the magic teacher has arrived. He greets the fencing teacher and says that's all for today, since it's time for the next lesson. Kunon thanks Master Auro. Jenny approaches, finding his interest in fencing interesting. Kunon comments that to use magic, you need both knowledge and physical strength, leaving Jenny impressed by how much he has changed. She asks if he wants to take a break before starting the magic lesson, and Kunon replies that he's fine. Jenny asks him to review the magic he learned last time, called Hauri, saying it's fine for him to start from wherever he remembers. Kunon uses magic to create several balls of water, leaving Jenny shocked. Iko starts shouting that her Kunon is amazing. Jenny can't believe what she's seeing since she only taught him a little, and what she sees now is entirely his own progress. She starts to find him scary. Elsewhere, we see a maid telling Mirika that her carriage is ready. Mirika wonders if she really needs to go. The maid asks if she dislikes going to see her fiancé that much. Mirika wonders if Kunon feels the same way she does, since he always has a sad face. The maid comments that it's a decision made by His Majesty, the King, and Mirika agrees to go. Inside the carriage, she keeps grumbling, since Kunon, who bears the hero's scar, is precious to the kingdom, and that's why they arranged this political marriage. As a member of the royal family, it's her duty, but even so, it's tedious. Every time she asks what he likes and what they could do for fun, but he always replies that he doesn't like anything, with a sad face, saying he can't do anything and can't go anywhere. Thinking that she'll have to see that gloomy face for the rest of her life is discouraging. When she arrives at Kunon's house, she sees a completely different boy. Kunon, smiling, greets Princess Mirika, leaving her in shock. She looks at Iko, who unnecessarily comments that the princess looks beautiful, and that if he were a big, bearded, middle-aged man, he wouldn't leave her alone. This makes Mirika remark that the example is pretty scary. What really catches her attention, however, is Kunon. He asks if everything is alright, and Mirika questions what happened to him. Kunon comments that he has started to like magic, leaving Mirika confused. Next, he takes his wand and casts the Ari spell, enchanting Mirika. She remarks that it's very beautiful, and Kunon creates a rainbow, impressing her even more. Kunon apologizes for always making her uncomfortable, and Mirika also apologizes. He reaches out his hand, asking her to listen to what he has to say, because many fun things have happened. She takes his hand, and the two of them go out for a walk. At night, on their way back home, Mirika comments that it was a lot of fun and that she's looking forward to next time. Kunon thinks that it was the first time he reached out his hand to someone. Iko says that this makes him a knight. We then see a flashback of Kunon asking how he should interact with Princess Mirika because he wanted to become a man worthy of her. The teacher says she will teach him about noble behavior and etiquette. That same night, Jenny is thinking about what she should do, since it's not normal for a boy to be able to maintain 7 water balls at the same time, something even she can't do. She realizes that Kunon improved too quickly and that now there is nothing left she can teach him. Jenny wonders if it's time to move on to intermediate level magic, but quickly closes the book when someone scolds her for making too much noise in the library. Jenny thinks that children should only learn basic magic and that this job was supposed to be something easy, with a very high salary. She's afraid to raise the level of magic because although it is useful, it is not something safe. Kunon is only 7 years old, and it's far too soon for him to learn advanced magic. Even so, she is willing to find a way and keep working for the sake of her own livelihood. The next day, Jenny tells Kunon that they will do something different, and he replies that it's fine. She then explains that Aori, the magic he uses, is simply the production of water, and that now they are going to analyze the nature of magic. Kunon comments that producing water and making it float allows it to maintain a spherical shape. Jenny congratulates him for noticing that. She explains that temperature, viscosity, components, color, shape, brightness, aroma, and taste, when analyzed, show that there are various types of magic. Even though they are all water type, they can be very different. Jenny creates 2 bowls of water and asks Kunon to touch them. He touches both and notices that one is cold and the other is hot. Jenny explains that by adding arrangements to magic, you create originality. Kunon asks what that means, and she replies that this is the decisive individuality of a mage, which can also be called a difference in talent. Kunon asks if this is the ability to alter the details of magic. Then, he casts the Aori spell again, lets the water fall into a cup, and asks Iko to try it. She takes the cup and drinks, tasting apple flavor. Kunon says it's the plum getting its revenge on her. Iko comments that it tastes good and is easy to drink. Jenny is terrified because he managed to do an arrangement she spent the whole night thinking about how to accomplish, in just a few seconds. She says that Kunon is capable of doing anything. Kunon comments that it was quite difficult, and that he will try even harder. At night, in bed, Kunon thinks that he can identify the shape and scent of things, but he doesn't know their colors. Because of this, it's hard for him to notice magical changes, and he concludes that he won't be able to create an eye. The next day, Iko asks what Kunon wants to drink, and he asks for milk tea. Iko asks him to provide hot water, and Kunon does it easily, which surprises Iko, who comments that for someone who can't use magic, it seems like a divine miracle. As he passes the bowl of water over the apples, Kunon feels something strange and stands up in a panic. Iko asks what happened, and Kunon says he thinks he was able to see. Iko gets super excited and says that if he's lying, she's going to slap him. Kunon asks her to calm down, saying that he's not sure yet, and that he probably didn't really see anything. Iko pulls his cheek, saying that he needs to have more of a sense of humor, because tasteless jokes like that are unacceptable. Kunon then says that he thinks he was able to see colors through magic. He picks up a green apple and asks if it's correct to say that it's red, and Iko replies that it's not. He picks up another one and asks if that one is red, and Iko confirms, explaining that the colors and the names of the colors still don't match up for him since he's never seen them before. Kunon agrees, and Iko says that green apples are light green, which leaves Kunon even more confused by the explanation. Iko asks if he knows how many apples are in the jar, and Kunon replies that there are 5. 3 red and 2 green. Iko hugs him, saying it's a miracle. Then, she goes to report everything to Kunon's father, who is surprised. Iko explains that the effective range is still low, but even so he managed to distinguish the colors. The closer he is, the better he can see, and the effect becomes even clearer through touch. The father asks if Kunon can read books, and Iko confirms, saying that he can identify the colors by running his fingers over them. He doesn't know the letters yet, but he is fascinated by books and illustrated guides. The father feels relieved and asks why they don't return to the main house, since Kunon is living separately because he doesn't want others to feel bad for him. Iko refuses, saying that Kunon is about to go through a big change. The father agrees, but asks if she isn't trying too hard to take care of him all by herself. Iko replies that it's all right, and the father comments that her happiness is good for his son. Iko, not missing the opportunity, asks for a raise, which is once again denied. In the gardens, Kunon says he's looking forward to seeing teacher Jenny because he wants her to evaluate his new magic. He uses Aori again, but this time the magic is bigger and red in color. His mother, brother, and father arrive at the garden, and when Kunon sees his mother, he loses control of his magic and gets completely soaked. When he calls out to her, his mother faints, leaving Kunon confused. Iko then explains that red is also the color of blood. The father punishes him by taking away his allowance for 2 months and cuts Iko's salary for 3 months, causing her to panic and faint. In the end, we see Jenny terrified in a corner, wondering how far this boy will go and whether he might even achieve the greatest title in magic, known as the Blue Mage. Kunon is now 9 years old, and his father, Gurion, is starting to worry about his education. He calls his brother and tells him about his intention to send Kunon to school. Gurion explains his plan to enroll him in the school for nobles, but his brother expresses concern. Kunon had never left the castle since he was born, and his uncle fears that the boy will have trouble interacting with people outside the palace. Gurion had already thought about that, and that's exactly why he called Kunon's uncle first. He begs his brother to help the boy at school and make sure nothing goes wrong. In a flashback, Kunon's uncle remembers the day he wanted to go out and play with Gurion. That day, Gurion was worried because Kunon couldn't see, but his brother reassured him, saying he would hold his hand to make sure he wouldn't fall. However, as soon as Kunon took his second step, his leg slipped, and his brother accidentally let go of his hand, which unfortunately led to Kunon's fall. It's easy to imagine that Kunon didn't trust his brother as much after that. Even so, without a shadow of a doubt, Kunon's brother assures Gurion that he will look after Kunon and make sure nothing happens to him. Meanwhile, Kunon is with Iko, practicing his magic as usual. He trains hydromancy, a type of magic used to find lost things. Iko jokes that he should find her youth, and he replies by reminding her that she is already as cheerful and young as she should be, so there's no need for that. When she asks him to find her future husband, he replies that she is a beautiful young woman and that many men would line up for her. He himself would be interested, if he weren't a noble. The playful conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Lady Flora. As always, Lady Flora teaches him the things he needs to know. Suddenly, she becomes uneasy. The boy is now 9 years old. She has already taught him many things and raised him to be a gentleman. She wonders if she might be making a mistake, and whether she should have raised him to be a more cheerful and relaxed man. Kunon notices that she is troubled and asks what she is thinking about. Looking at how cute and adorable he is, she feels happy to have been part of raising such a lovely boy. Later that night, Iko takes Kunon to the main quarters. On the way, she feels very cold and asks Kunon for help. Without hesitation, Kunon creates warm water for them, and Iko hugs the water for comfort. The water is better than any he had made before, and she excitedly comments on how pleasant it is. He also enjoys the compliments, but says that it's just a prototype. She really needs something that warm to get a good night's rest, and he starts considering making a bed with the same density. Kunon is very worried about the fact that Gurion has called them. He wonders if he did something wrong, but Iko reassures him, saying that there's nothing wrong and reminding him that he learned from the lessons of blood and didn't do anything wrong. As they walk, he reminds her that he only did it because she asked him to give it his all. She doesn't hate what he did either, but Gurion does, so their opinions don't matter. They arrive at the castle and the servant greets them. He mentions his brother, Iklo, and recognizes him immediately. He greets his brother and accompanies him to their parents' room. On the way, Iklo asks if Kunon needs him to hold his hand, but Kunon says no. He has grown up and now understands his surroundings, able to walk on his own. Iklo remembers the days when he used to hold Kunon's hand, and seeing his brother grow so much makes him excited. Kunon notices that his brother is deep in thought and asks what's wrong, but Iklo says it's nothing important. They arrive at their parents' room, and Gurion tells Kunon what Miss Flora informed him. He has completed all the basic education lessons, which is quite an achievement. However, now he needs to attend the school for nobles. Gurion explains that every noble must attend this school as it is one of the requirements. However, due to Kunon's special condition, they had obtained permission from the king to train him at home. Even so, he would be at a disadvantage if he never went to school, so he should consider that possibility. Kunon vehemently refuses. He tells his father that he has no interest and that since it's not mandatory, he doesn't want to go. He starts to think that his father just wants to get rid of him and asks if Gurion is angry because of his allowance, since he always complained that he spent too much. Gurion insists that's not the case. He states that it's simply something necessary for a noble. Kunon asks again if it's because of the last incident involving blood, but Gurion denies it. His mother and Aishlo try to calm the tense situation, but without success. When Kunon finally calms down, Gurion explains that the reason he has to go is because nobles who don't attend school are always at a disadvantage, and his fiancée, Mirika, would be looked down upon if he didn't go. Faced with this, Kunon changes his mind and agrees to go. Gurion informs him that he won't have to go for long, just to take the exams. There are only 4 exams, and he will only go 4 times, once for each exam. Mirika and Iklo will also take the exams, so they will go together. His mother is happy that he agreed and immediately starts preparing him for school. When Kunon leaves with his mother, Gurion pulls Iklo aside and warns him that other nobles, upon seeing Mirika and Kunon together, might become envious. Iklo assures his father that he will protect them and stay by their side. Later, Kunon meets Mirika and tells her the news. She is excited to go to school with him, but Kunon is worried about how nobles who are interested in her might treat him. Mirika isn't worried about that and tells him not to be concerned. This only makes him wonder if she isn't popular at school. To reassure him, she says that she is indeed popular, and that there are several men after her, as many as the fingers on one hand. 5. Now, he has confidence in himself, so there's no problem anymore. Kunon's uniform is ready. He puts it on and looks like someone from royalty. Iko jokes with him and Kunon responds as usual. His response surprises those who had never seen him so cheerful before. They get into the carriage and Kunon uses his water magic to stabilize the wheels during the journey, then says goodbye to his parents. The carriage departs while his mother cries in front of the house. Inside the carriage, Iklo notices how smooth the ride is and realizes it's thanks to Kunon's magic. Seeing Iklo, Kunon understands that his brother was worried about him and his safety. He says that he has grown up now and is confident, so Iklo doesn't need to worry anymore. He remembers when he slipped and fell as a child, and Iklo held his hand, and admits that his brother felt extremely guilty and took all the responsibility for the fall. However, Kunon reassures him, saying he knows that Iklo was not to blame. He tells his brother that at that time he felt bad about life and wanted to die. Now he no longer wants to die. He is resilient and assures that he will live no matter what happens, even if he is the last human to die. Iklo feels encouraged seeing how mature his younger brother has become. Now he doesn't even know anymore if Kunon is his younger or older brother. He admits that Kunon has changed and wonders if this is the result of his close relationship with Iko. Soon they approach the school, and Kunon is the first to notice. He tells Ixlo that they're already close, and Ixlo wonders how he realized it so quickly. Kunon reveals that he can now sense the presence of humans around him. They arrive at the school and Mirika appears to welcome them. She compliments how nice his uniform looks, and the cheerful atmosphere between the two makes Ixlo wonder why they're so happy. Mirika moves to guide them into the school, but Kunon takes a step back. He uses his magic to read the sounds and feelings around him and realizes there are several people there. He knows that if he were his old self, he would have retreated and gone back home, but now he won't stop and won't be a coward. He turns to Mirika and asks if she would grant him the honor of being the lady among them that day. He asks her to hold his hand and lead him into the school. At the school, Professor Cast, one of the teachers, awaits Kunon's arrival. She is uneasy, as she knows Kunon bears the hero's scar and isn't sure if she is capable of taking care of a child like him, since she has been ordered to guide him through the school. Lost in her thoughts, she hears the students commenting in awe about how handsome Kunon is, saying they've never seen such a beautiful child before. Unbothered by what the other students are saying, the children enter the classroom and walk past Cast, who also watches them in admiration. She snaps out of it and quickly goes to meet them. She introduces herself as the one responsible for Kunon, and he greets her. He bows like a lady and says that today he needs to be a beautiful lady. Cast doesn't understand what he means, but Kunon insists that, although he is biologically male, today he will be a woman. She is confused but doesn't press the matter since she needs to accompany him. Kunon says goodbye to Mirika and Ixlo, saying he hopes to meet them later for a meal. Some students watch the scene from the building next door. Among them is Prince Liao, the sixth prince of the kingdom and Mirika's brother. His friends, who are also his subordinates, comment about Kunon. He is the first person to be born with the hero's scar in about 100 years and has received the king's blessings. They immediately notice that Liao is uncomfortable with the conversation, so they change the subject to avoid upsetting him. Cass takes Kunon to the classroom and asks if he has ever heard of the advancement exam. She explains that there are 5 of these exams and that, although they are usually taken over a long period, she has received orders from the king and Gurion for Kunon to take all 5 in a short amount of time. Kunon is also aware of this and acknowledges that it is a case of nepotism. He tells Cass that his father and the king are close friends, and that's why they made this exception for him. Even so, he knows that this is wrong and goes against the integrity of the school. Cass isn't interested in conversations involving city politics, so she tells him to just take the exam and stop talking. However, Kunon doesn't stop. He keeps talking until he finishes the test. Cass collects the tests and goes to grade them. She is completely shocked when she realizes that he got every single question right without making a single mistake. After that, Kunon meets up with Mirika so they can have lunch together. However, before they reach the cafeteria, Liao shows up with his subordinates. He asks to confirm whether Kunon really received the king's blessing. Mirika is visibly nervous, and Kunon notices this, even though he doesn't know who the boy is. Ixlo also arrives and tries to calm Liao down, but the prince keeps causing trouble. To protect his fiancée, Kunon takes water from a nearby glass and pours it around Lia's pants, making it look like he wet himself. Then he draws everyone's attention to the fact that Lia has wet his pants. Lia denies it, but the evidence speaks for itself, so he leaves with his friends, embarrassed and furious. Both Mirika and Ixlo know that it was Kunon who did it. Ixlo looks at him suspiciously, but Kunon just says they should go eat. During the meal, Kunon asks who Liao is and is shocked to find out that he is his future brother-in-law. He wonders if siblings can be cruel to their own brothers, since his own brother was never like that, and is surprised to learn that there are siblings who don't care about each other. He's just happy that Ixlo is his brother and that he cares so much about him. Ixlo, however, is worried about the fact that they provoked someone so important, but Mirika says that's just how Kunon is. Ixlo just hopes they don't get into any more trouble. Kunon, on the other hand, seems to be having a lot of fun. All that's left is to hope he doesn't step on any more toes. In the cafeteria, Kunon asks Mirika why Prince Lyle got in his way, openly displaying his violent nature. She replies that he showed up to put pressure on him. She mentions that her brother is the 6th prince, and she is the 9th princess. Because of that, her position is lower in the royal hierarchy. But her fiancé is the mage who bears the hero's scar. Her status rose quickly. Now that Kunon has become well known, they will stand above high society. But above all that, Mirika is happy to be his fiancé. And so is Kunon, suggesting that when he sees the king, he should kneel as a sign of gratitude. That said, he wants to go apologize to Liu, but neither Io nor Mirika allow it. Next, we move on to the teacher. It is mentioned that today is Kunon's final exam, so he must learn to modify the texture of water. Kunon transforms the water into ice, but the sensation is like that of an apple, and Jane suggests he touch various things to reproduce the texture. Later, we see Kunon touching a horse. Io thinks this is strange, but at that moment, Mirika arrives. Kunon comments that since it's the last day he'll be able to hear her voice, it feels as if his world is filling with sadness. Mirika tells the dramatic Kunon that they're not leaving until evening, instantly dispelling his sadness. After that, the 3 of them go to take the final exam. Kunon gets excited because he feels like he's in a real school, although he also feels sad for not being with his teacher. She says she'll be watching and wishes him good luck. It's clear that Kunon and the teacher have more trust in each other. The protagonist replies that this was because of the exams. She says she became a teacher to follow the man she loved to a school for nobles. However, the man failed the exam and she ended up alone. The other 2 don't understand how a teacher can share her life story with a student. And just at that moment, another student speaks to Mirika, asking her to introduce them to Kunon. With all the chivalry, Kunon introduces himself as the fiancé of Princess Mirika Uglia and the younger brother of Ixia. With that, he feels more relieved to know that his brother and his fiancé have friends, since no one used to talk to them. However, Mirika explains that if she was seen alone, it was so she could spend more time with him, so she asked her friends for a little peace. Since Kunon didn't know about this, he thanks the princess for her consideration, but admits that he was also worried. Obviously, he couldn't ask if they didn't have friends or if they were alone at school. So, he's happy that his brother isn't alone and that the princess has friends. Otherwise, he would have to comfort them by comparing their loneliness to his own situation, saying that it's okay not to have friends. So much drama leaves everyone speechless, but Mirika understands that for him, it doesn't make a difference not to have friends. Kunon confirms and mentions that humans do just fine on their own, which leaves the room intrigued. On the other hand, Layla is informed that it's already time for the exam. He orders them to wait for him, but his subordinates doubt that, even as a prince, the teacher would decide to wait for him. After all, it's the final exam. That's when the bell rings. The students take their seats. Our protagonist was about to be guided by Mirika, but at that moment Lou appears to separate them. People start to murmur. Lyle notices this, and, remembering what the castle maids used to say about him, becomes furious, since no one dares to say it to his face. However, suddenly, Kunon grabs his hand and introduces himself to him. Everyone is surprised. Lyle demands that he let go, but Kunon clings on like a snapping turtle, saying that he's his brother-in-law. Therefore, it's only proper that they get to know each other. So, we see the two of them struggling, and Kunon makes it clear that he didn't give him permission to touch him. Kunon points out how manly he seems, and adds that, by touching him, he can assume his face is very masculine. He assures that, if his eyes could see, he would have stared at his face so much that he'd make a hole from looking so hard. This makes Lou blush. Everyone starts laughing. The blonde, embarrassed, asks Kunon to let him go. Kunon lets him go, and then the whole problem is over. During the exam, we see that the prince seemed a bit thoughtful, but in the end, after evaluating the tests, the teacher announces that everyone passed. So Kunon goes back home. He says goodbye to all his classmates and even to the teacher, to whom he offers his brother's hand. This is noticed by Liu, who, with a smile, tells his companions to go somewhere else. Back to magic practice, Jane asks Kunon to make a whirlpool. First, Kunon creates a sphere of water and makes it spin. Then they ask him to stop the impact and split it into 10, and with effort, Kunon manages to do it. They also ask him to make it turn red, green, and yellow, as well as change the texture, and he manages to do all of it without any problems. Jane congratulates him, saying it was magnificent. Before leaving, Kunon asks for a moment, mentioning that he made a modification by adding shape and temperature to the texture. So we see Kunon shape a sphere into a bird, which then flies away. Jane is surprised, falls to the ground, and says that it's all over. Shortly after, we see the two of them having tea. Jane wants to talk about something. Kunon thinks it must be the dinner to celebrate his graduation and tells her that she's invited too. She comments that it's not about that, but that graduation is a good time to tell the truth, asking if he is mentally prepared, because she needs to tell him something very impactful. We see Kunon worried about this and taking a sip of tea. Before continuing, Jane asks Iko to leave the room. When she leaves, Kunon clenches his fist, saying it's all too sudden, imagining that Jane is a goddess from the night sky and that she needs to leave to return to her own world. Jane likes the story, but that's not it. The truth is that she has nothing left to teach him. She confesses that, for some time now, she hasn't had anything new to teach. She has already taught him everything about elemental magic that isn't used for attack. Now, Kunon even masters magic better than she does. All he needs is to learn a new spell to surpass her. Kunon stands up, saying that's not true. He confesses that he enjoyed the tricks and clever methods she used to teach him. Even when she was only trying to instruct him with her magic, Jane realizes that Kunon had already noticed her desperation, which makes her feel more at ease. Kunon says that his magic expanded thanks to her tricks, recalling when Jenny talked about Aori, comparing the sphere she created to an eyeball for Kunon. That interaction was the only thing that gave him the will to live. She saved him. That's why, if she's resigning because her salary is too low, he'll tell his father to increase her pay. She insists that, in fact, she feels bad because she receives much more than she deserves, and that she doesn't deserve so much since she's not really doing anything. She comes closer, holds his shoulders, and says that he'll do better if he has a truly capable teacher to instruct him, so that he can become as great as he is meant to be. When she kneels down to say goodbye, all the water animals he had created also touch her body, trying to persuade her to stay. But she doesn't want to stay. She says that those little tricks won't help him anymore. Even so, he insists that those little tricks are exactly what he wants and needs. If they're so important, why does he keep calling them tricks? As if they have no value. In the end, all his requests and pleas are in vain. She had already made her decision and leaves without looking back. Outside the castle, she looks back and admits that he has the skill and talent to become an extraordinary sorcerer. She thinks about how hard he works and how he is constantly training. She acknowledges that he started at a disadvantage because of the hero's curse he carried, but that he managed to overcome this disadvantage and become as great as he is now. That's why she won't lose to him, and will make sure she keeps improving as well. Later, Iko meets Kunon and tells him that Lady Flora, his elementary school teacher, has also left. She explains that Flora left because he graduated and no longer needed elementary lessons. When Kunon wonders why Flora didn't wait to say goodbye to him, Iko reveals that Flora said she would get too emotional if she had to say farewell. Being a good boy, Kunon promises to write to Flora and say goodbye in a letter. Iko suggests that, in the letter, he should ask if Flora knows any handsome, well-paid, and single men in her circle, so that Echo can get married. When he finds out that Iko also wants to get married and leave him, Kunon is heartbroken. Iko insists that he'll be fine without her, but Kunon only feels like he'll be left an orphan. Jenny left him, Flora left him, and now Iko also wants to get married. He concludes that he won't ask Flora anything about a man. During dinner with his parents, he says that Jenny asked him to find a good sorcerer to teach him, since she was no longer good enough for him. He then asks if they know any talented sorcerer they could recommend. At that moment, Isho's memory brings up a sorcerer he had heard about at the academy. He doesn't quite remember the name, but when he mentions part of it, his mother immediately recognizes it. Zione, the royal sorcerer. Kunon wants Zione as his master right away and asks Gurion to call him. Gurion interrupts him, saying that Zione is a royal sorcerer. Royal sorcerers answer only to the king and members of the royal family. No other noble can have access to them, much less bring them to their own castle. Kunon tries to convince his father, reminding him of his close relationship with the king and asking if he couldn't use that influence to get Zione. When Gurion insists that it's impossible, Kunon comes up with a plan. He would accompany Gurion to the palace, get lost inside, and then the royal sorcerers would find him and he would become their apprentice. A clearly flawed plan. Gurion wastes no time in saying the plan is absurd, but his mother believes in him. She is easily moved by Kunon's wishes, and Gurion, in turn, is easily moved by his wife's wishes. In the end, Kunon's mother manages to convince Gurion to at least try to speak with the king. Although he makes no promises, Gurion sends a formal request to the king, asking for Zione. At the palace, one of the princesses takes Gurion's request to the Grand Master. The Grand Master wonders what kind of noble would make such an absurd request to have the royal sorcerer as a mentor. However, when the princess reveals that the boy is her sister's fiancé, the Grand Master immediately realizes it's Kunon and his jaw drops in shock. A few days go by after that, and finally, Kunon receives a summons from the royal palace to present himself to the royal sorcerer. He gets into a carriage alongside his father, who seems quite pleased with how things have turned out. Kunon remarks that the friendship between the king and his father must be quite deep for the king to be willing to grant such a request. However, his father replies that the real reason they were given the opportunity to meet the royal sorcerer is that the court's chief mage showed great interest in Kunon and his abilities, wanting to meet him in person. Next, his father asks what kind of magic Kunon is already able to use at this point. Kunon immediately chants an incantation and creates a small sphere of water, which quickly transforms into a black cat and sits on his lap. His father is amazed, saying he can't believe something like that can be achieved through magic, and starts petting the little kitten. He is surprised to realize that the cat doesn't even seem magical or made of water. To the touch, it's exactly like any other ordinary cat you might find on the street. Kunon explains that he only recently managed to master the appearance of animals, because before that he could only create completely transparent creatures. But in his latest attempts, he has been able to change the color of the animals as he wishes. His father starts playing with the cat, all happy, and Kunon asks if they shouldn't adopt a real cat for the house. Like a typical father, he refuses, claiming that a cat would make too much of a mess around the house. Besides, he might end up tripping over it and getting hurt. To top it off, he says that Kunon's mother prefers dogs anyway, so he really has no choice when it comes to another pet. Soon after, they enter the capital and are immediately greeted by a silver-haired girl named Resha, the kingdom's second princess, and Marika's older sister. Kunon greets her warmly, saying that he is very fortunate to have such a beautiful woman as her for a sister-in-law. His father wonders if his son is the streetwise type, but decides to think about it later. Resha smiles and comments that she has heard a lot about Kunon from her younger sister and would love to have a long conversation with him. She also notices the cat and asks if it needs any special kind of food. However, the moment Kunon's father puts the cat back on the floor, Kunon ends the spell and the cat turns back into just a puddle of water. Resha then realizes that Kunon is much more skilled than she had initially imagined. While the father is a bit sad that he didn't get the chance to name the cat, Resha offers to take Kunon to the Black Tower. The father says that he will also talk to the king and, maybe, come back home afterwards. Kunon tells him not to worry, because after visiting the Black Tower, he plans to go see Marika and maybe even take her out on a date. His father tells him to enjoy his time and promises to arrange a carriage whenever he decides to return home. Resha then takes Kunon to the Black Tower and on the way, asks if he is comfortable walking or if he needs any help. Kunon replies that he is perfectly fine and immediately starts asking a series of questions that leave her confused, as all of them are on a level comparable to Stephen Hawking's theories when it comes to magic. She says she can't have such an advanced discussion while walking and asks if he knows how many children the current king has. Kunon had never thought about that until then. Resha then reveals that the king is quite the ladies' man and has fathered, one after another, 7 princes and 10 princesses. she is the second princess, while Mirika is the ninth. Even more interesting is the fact that, in this country, the succession to the throne does not work in the traditional way, where the throne automatically passes to the eldest son. There, they follow something called meritocracy, in which all princes and princesses are evaluated based on their abilities and merits, which can vary according to their talents and the level of dedication they show to a particular art. This means that even the youngest prince or princess has the same chance of claiming the throne, regardless of age. She also says that she herself has already given up her right to the throne in this succession, choosing to become a mage, and is now dedicated to improving her skills to become one of the best sorceresses in the country. As they walked down the corridor, a sudden feeling drew Kunon to a window, where he absent-mindedly looked toward a dark tower, from which he could sense the presence of all kinds of different magical beings. Soon after, Resha tells him something very important, as she believes there is a small chance he might end up being dragged pointlessly into the struggle for succession. She advises him not to join any faction until he is sure of his decision, and also to never say anything that could be used against him to tarnish his reputation. In exchange for such valuable advice, Kunon decides to repay her by showing her his special magic technique. He freezes a thin layer of water under his shoes, creating a film of ice that basically allows them to skate. She loves the idea and immediately asks to try it. Kunon quickly uses the magic on her as well, and then the two of them start sliding down the corridors like complete lunatics, while the guards try to chase after them since they can't allow Resha to get hurt. Unfortunately for the guards, Resha and Kunon are much faster and manage to get away from them. However, their luck soon runs out when a knight spots the two and starts chasing them. Kunon asks if they shouldn't stop, but Resha is having too much fun and says they can probably lose the knight. That's where they're mistaken, because the knight manages to catch up to them and takes them to the garden, where they get a good scolding. Later, they are escorted to the tower, where Kunon is soon introduced to Rondimon, the kingdom's chief sorcerer. Kunon feels humbled in his presence, realizing just how vast the world truly is. Before, he thought Resha's magic was impressive, but compared to Rondimon's, it seemed to be on a completely different level. Rondimond immediately asks if he was born with a water crest, and Kunon replies that he was, then admits that he doesn't really understand how these crests work. Rondimond explains that there are 7 different types of crests that mages can possess, each one related to their magical affinity: fire, water, earth, wind, light, darkness, and thunder. In addition, each crest has a star ranking, ranging from 1 to 5, which makes Kunon's 2 stars something relatively common. Resha comments that she is also a 2-star wind mage. Kunon immediately understands and says he can sense that, comparing himself and Resha to common processed cheese, while Rondimond would be like a wheel of aged artisanal parmesan. Rondimond agrees with the description and reveals that, in fact, he is a 4-star mage. Soon after, Rondimond takes them to the training field below and warns that he will test Kunon's magical abilities a bit to assess his potential. Kunon feels a bit intimidated, wondering if this means that a real mage would be willing to become his tutor if he passes the test. However, he doesn't have much time to think about it, because Rondimond immediately calls over an older student, who is also a real mage, and asks him to demonstrate his water magic. The mage chants the incantation, and immediately, several drops of magical water appear in the air, forming a bright and beautiful pattern. Rondimond then turns to Kunon and tells him to surpass the young man's magic with his own. Kunon remembers what Jen always told him, that he could not only create water, but also manipulate the water already present in the environment. Until then, this had never been a problem for him, but he had never tried to take control of water created by another mage. He realizes that Rondimond, without any effort, has created a challenge that neither he nor Jen had ever considered before, and now he would have to deal with it on the spot. Even so, Kunon decides to try and immediately attempts to wrest control of the magic from the silver-haired mage. At first he believes it will work, but soon he encounters an obstacle, as the water droplets begin to resist, since the other mage is able to easily maintain control over them. Rondimond watches with great interest to see what will happen next. Kunon, however, is not the type to give up easily, so he gives it his all and uses all his strength to try to take control. To everyone's surprise, Kunon manages to wrest 2 of the water spheres from the hands of the highly trained and experienced mage before Rondimond decides to end the test. Kunon falls to his knees, gasping for breath, while the silver-haired mage sincerely admits that he never imagined a mere boy would be able to take 2 of his water spheres. He then turns to Rondimond and says that he would be willing to accept Kunon as his disciple, but immediately, other mages begin to speak up, saying that they would also like to have him as an apprentice. Rondimond tells everyone to be quiet, as he still wants to see what Kunon is capable of, and asks him to create something he has imagined. Kunon immediately creates a trampoline using his water magic, and Rondimond starts jumping on it, having fun like a child. The other mages line up, wanting to try it out as well, curious to understand how it works and whether they could reproduce the technique. Rondemonde, however, tells Kunon that he wants him to spend the night at the castle so they can see what else he is capable of doing. Kunon replies that unfortunately, he already has a date with Marika and needs to take her out to dinner that night. At that moment, Resha asks if he can create other animals with his magic, or even humans. Kunon replies that he can do both, and immediately creates a human doll made of water in the shape of his maid. The technique is still not perfect, so the figure is a bit translucent, and he hasn't quite adjusted the movements yet, which is still a problem for now. The silver-haired mage asks if the dolls can do anything, and Kunon tells about the time he tried to make them fly, but the idea wasn't well received, since the doll looked very silly while doing it. Rondemonde immediately becomes interested and Kunon is forced to demonstrate. He starts playing with the doll, making it go up and down in the air repeatedly, scaring half the people in the castle. This earns him yet another scolding, and everyone ends up having to apologize again. Soon the sun sets, and Rondemonde tells Kunon that he has successfully passed the tests, and that he will personally assign a wizard to help him learn to use his magic more efficiently. Kunon is overjoyed and goes to tell his father the news, who becomes irritated when he learns that there have been complaints about his son twice in just a few hours and scolds him for being irresponsible with his magic. Shortly after, his father leaves to return to the mansion, leaving Kunon behind with Resha, who realizes that he needs to meet up with Marika or else he'll end up being late for dinner. Resha says that they'll have to use magic to reach Marika in time. So, they decide to do a little experiment. Kunon creates a bubble of water, and Resha uses her wind magic to propel them forward, as if they were on Aladdin's magic carpet, flying through the skies and reaching Marika's quarters in no time at all. Unfortunately, Resha forgets to gradually decrease the magic and cuts it off all at once, causing the two of them to fall. They end up being caught by the knight Dario for the third time on the same day, who is quite irritated and once again gives them a long lecture. Meanwhile, Marika waits for her Prince Charming, dressed up and ready. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel and comment the word wizard.